Hi, everyone. Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with Tony nominee Celia Keenan-Bolger for Mother Play. And it's really special, this Tony nomination. You've gotten to share it with your entire cast. Your whole three-person cast is up for it this year. What has it been like so far sharing the Tony season with them?
I love that you point that out because I really feel like leading up to the nominations, when you're in a three-person show, it's so clear from the inside that like the system does not function without one of the parts. And I was like, if one of us is left out, I'm just gonna feel so sad coming to work, like that we weren't all recognized. So I am really grateful to the nominators for understanding that, but also I think I think people in theater talk about this a lot about how close you become with your castmates. And I think maybe particularly because this is a family drama and because what Paula Vogel wrote has such personal relevance and she's really drawing from her life that it sort of opened up the floor for all of us to talk about our personal family lives, which then just has made us even closer. And so, just being able to share this award season with the two of them, I also just have such enormous respect for both of them as actors. Like getting to be on stage with them is such a huge privilege that I think, I think I've been a part of things where really talented people were not always recognized. And so just to be this time around with two actors where we all get to share this together, it's so special.
Yeah. And speaking of Paula Vogel, I believe I read that she wrote this character for you. What goes through, what kind of pressures and inner voices come up when someone like Paula Vogel is writing something for you that is also about her life, a deeply personal story, like you said?
Yeah, I think Second Stage, which is who's producing this production, they made a commitment when they acquired a Broadway theater to produce one play a year that was written by an American playwright, like a new American play, which I think is like such an amazing, um, it's an amazing thing to do in the first place. But Paula was at that first, like where that statement was made, and I also was there. I've worked at Second Stage four other times before this. And I saw Paula and she was like, this was like 8 years ago, I think. And she was like, I'm writing something for you. And one part of me was like, just don't really think about that because I know the way the world works. And I was like, if some famous person comes around and the second stage is like, we actually need to sell tickets or my schedule doesn't work out, or who knows? And I was just like, I'm not going to think about it too much. But then every time I would see her, he would say, I'm working on your play. And I just thought, oh my God, I cannot believe I've been such a fan of Paula's for many years. And we had worked together previously. I did a very early version of a play she wrote called Indecent at the Sundance Theater Lab, like on this gorgeous mountain. And that was sort of where I fell in love with her beyond being a writer, but as a collaborator. And so then when she sent me this script, I got an email and she was like, I've got your play. And I was like, happening. And then I started reading it and I was like, oh my God, this is like to play a version of her. And I think if it had been someone other than Paula, I would have been so intimidated and so scared. But having worked with her before and just knowing the spirit that she brings into a rehearsal room, there is so little ego. And she even said from the very beginning, she said, this is based on my mother and my brother and me. And so I've written that part, but the play is not done until you actors bring your stamp and like you help me understand how they function inside of this play. And so from the beginning, she took so much pressure off of all of us to sort of, we would say, well, what happened in real life in this scene or in this, apartment? And she would tell us the real story. And she would say, but if that's not useful, then, don't use it. And so I think she was really the one who set up the dynamic that made working on something so autobiographical, it made us feel like there was liberty inside of the story, even though, it was so personal to her.
Yeah. Well, I know you have that liberty, but your character, Martha, really is a stand-in for Paula herself. The name is different, of course, but when you have the person in the room, the writer in the room, who is that version of the character, how much of her are you putting into your performance with whether it's physical, emotional, anything? How much are you going to the source for or creating yourself?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like nobody has really asked me that question. It's like it's it feels so delicate because on one hand I feel such responsibility both to like represent Paula, who I genuinely think is like one of the most important figures of the American theater, not just because of her as a writer, but also as a teacher. Like she's just a very deeply good person. And so there's that part. But then I think, we're not particularly similar. Like I think if somebody said, like, who's the perfect person to play Paula Vogel? I don't know that you would come to me. So I had to sort of figure out like what can I thread into this performance that is very much of Paula? And what do I release myself from some responsibility and say, like, Martha? And actually, Paula has another brother named Mark who did a lot of caretaking for their mother at the end. And the play is actually dedicated to Mark. And I think the reason that Martha is called Martha is because
Mhm.
of Mark that she was giving, and that in some ways I'm a little bit of a amalgam of Mark and Paula. And so I was able to sort of let myself say, like, it does not have to be a direct representation of Paula in every way, but there are certainly like there's a lot of physical stuff that I would watch her and tried to sort of put in. I just Carrie Jones just came and saw the show, who has worked with Paula a lot. I worked with her on Glass Menagerie, and she said, I have to tell you, there is a line, and I won't tell you what line it is, but the way you said it was exactly like Paula. And I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest compliment you could give me. And I'm like, don't tell me what it is because I don't want to know. But I do think that's the other gift of having the writer in the room is that you are interfacing with them all the time and able to sort of see the way different situations impact them. And so even if it's not like a direct grab from Paula, I do think having that amount of time around her couldn't help but influence the way that I'm playing this part.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing about Martha in that she is really kind of in a way, the centerpiece of this script. You are on stage all the time, doing a lot of like really active listening, active observation as like all these life events kind of imprint on her. She's like
Mm.
learning from all these life events along the way. How do you keep those moments alive and interesting while you're just kind of observing?
You just get to be on stage with Jim Parsons and Jessica Lange. That's like the most, it's not the most satisfying answer, but it is the most truthful answer. Like, I think I have learned so much about acting watching them. Like, Jessica, it's not like anything I've ever witnessed on stage before. She is so full and has access to so much. And yet there's not a lot of, um, it doesn't feel worked in a way. Like she's just so present. And I wonder maybe if it's because there are only three of us that we are so reliant upon each other that even we were just talking about this, like if when you do 8 shows a week, you just have days when you're like, oh, I'm like a little off or I'm a little tired or whatever. And never before have I felt like if I wasn't exactly where I sort of hoped I would be, if I just tell myself, like, tune in to what they're doing, I will find myself like back into in the play. And so there's that part of it. I also think sometimes the characters that make the biggest imprints when we go to the theater are like the flashiest, most like wild, exciting. And the truth is, like in life, a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of us, a lot of people are the observers, are the sort of ones who either feel on the outside or have been placed on the outside. And so I think I do also just feel a responsibility, maybe particularly in a family dynamic, to give a real um, representation of what it feels like to be the person in the family who is on the outside or who feels on the outside. Because I think also all of us, even if we were a powerful person in our family, can identify with that feeling. And so I think there's also that part of what Paula has written in, which is like, just because you say the least doesn't mean that there's not a whole lot going on. And so that's sort of a gift as an actor without language to try to tell the story of what it is that's happening internally as you're watching the dynamics in your family sort of spin out.
That's great that you say that because, there are a lot of intense moments, like in the play for sure. But I think one of the ones that is like just rings so clearly in my mind, even a while after seeing it, is the end when you and Jessica are there and it's just so quiet and so still, um, where it's just a moment of touch and looking
Mm-hmm.
at one another. What is it
Mm-hmm.
like sharing that final moment with her?
Oh my God. I mean, I remember at one point Tina Landau, our director, was like, "You have got to dry it out. You cannot cry in that last scene." I was like, "Tina, I'm not trying to be emotional. I'm not trying to conjure anything." But it's like, I think there is, Paula said at one point that she was trying to create a play that was a forgiveness ritual, and that she was trying to make something that brought her closer to forgiving her mother. And that in writing this play, she hoped that she could die and not feel so angry. And and I think that last moment to me feels like this embodiment of what Paula is trying to do and what has been so, it's not just getting to be with Jessica, like through everything that we have been through inside of the play to come to this moment of grace, but then also the audience, I feel in that last scene is, it's like the gift that Paula has given all of us, that it's like somehow they are also grappling with where they either need forgiveness or need to forgive. And that this like ritual that she's made, that she's like, I will make this thing in order to try to get myself closer. Jessica and I get to embody it. And then the audience gets to like think in their own life, like where they are also looking for some moment of forgiveness. And it's like we all get to be in this cycle in real time together. And so it's like not just what's happening on stage, but it's like that thing of what gets to happen in the building in that last scene that I think is like one of the most powerful things that I've ever gotten to be a part of on stage.
Yeah, she kind of also the play Mother Play title is kind of like Martha in a way to my reading is like learning also how to be mother and caretaker because in a way Jim Parsons is your mother for part of it. Jessica Lange is your mother. Is that kind of what do you feel like is the most important step of learning for her in that journey? Because she does kind of end up being the one caring for the family at the end.
Yeah. And just how the word mother is not exclusive to a person who has given birth and like has a child. Like that really, just even yesterday, I was like, God, the play is like really leaking into my life. But I called like three women in my life where I was like, you have been such a, like yesterday was Mother's Day. And I was like, you're support and nurturer in my life. And like when I think of Mother's Day, I'm thinking about you. And I was like, that is so totally connected to this play that I'm doing. And Paula has talked about wanting to have kids, not having children. And I think, again, what I was saying before, the way that she has been this mother to all of these young American playwrights, like that mothering is not something that we have to just take at face value. And I think my character's journey realizes like exactly what you said, that her brother was as much of a mother, maybe more of a mother to her than her own mother. And that stepping into that role, and she talks about mothering him at the end of his life, that it's like this role can be taken on regardless of like gender and what you have in your life, and more how you give of yourself. And I think that message is very powerful and very different from, we have all of these great American plays about families and about mothers, but I'm not sure that they lean into this idea of like how many different people inside of a family can take on the role of mother.
Mm. Well, you mentioned second stage earlier in our conversation, and I wanted to just bring this back because we're in a little bit of it's kind of like a full circle moment for you in a way, because you made your Broadway debut in Spelling Bee, a musical that I adore and many of us adore, nearly 20 years ago,
Yeah.
which was a second stage transfer. Now second stage owns the theater that you are here nominated again with. What would, if you look back on like Spelling Bee and that period of your life, what would your 2005 self have to say about this moment right now?
Oh my gosh. I really, all I ever wanted to be was an actor who worked. Like I just wanted to be a working actor. That was it. I wanted that from like a very young age, like to get to do this thing that I love so much. And I guess like extending this family metaphor, that I feel like second stage has been this artistic home for me from like a very young age. I think this is my fifth production with them. And Carol Rothman, who founded the theater 40 years ago, has been something like a second mother to me, like professionally, but also a little bit in my personal life as well. And this is her last year at second stage. And I just think like if my, I don't know how old I was, 26-year-old self knew that I was going to be a part of a Broadway production at second stage of like Broadway theater that they own, and that I would be nominated for my fifth Tony Award. Like I would not have believed that my life could have turned out this amazingly. Like truly, I just feel so lucky to get to do this thing that I love to do, but also to be recognized. It's like I I really feel like every project calls forth a different part of ourselves, and like that little person in Spelling Bee, like what I accessed then and then what I get to access now as Martha, like 20 years later almost, is so different. And so the idea that I could be recognized for that and also be recognized for this, it's just like really, it makes me feel so, so grateful.
Well, it's very well deserved fifth nomination, and we're wishing you lots of luck. Break a leg for the rest of your run there at the
Thanks,
Hayes.
Sam.
And for everyone watching, make sure you stick with Gold Derby the rest of this season. And Celia, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.